Hello, hi Mike, how are you?
Hi, Nizam. It's very nice to be with you tonight.
Same here, Mike, and thanks a lot for giving me this opportunity to interview you.
Of course, of course. Where do we
And
start?
I would just like to give a small brief about you to my audience. So, friends, we have Mike Deninger here. He is a licensed professional counselor, author, master trainer, and internationally recognized expert in the use of eye movement integration techniques. So this interview is mostly focused on MEMI. What is the abbreviation for multi-channel eye movement integration? So let us know about eye movement journey and what inspired Mike in his therapy journey and everything. We'll get to know about him and his journey directly. So, Mike, thank you once again. Please tell us, how did your journey start with this eye movement? How did the movement with the eye movement started?
Very, very good introduction.
Yeah.
So I'll give you the short version because I could go on for hours.
Uh,
But so it's important to know that I was a university administrator for about 20
okay.
years.
Mhm.
Special ed was my background. So I was a dean at Gallaudet University. But in my 40s, I stopped drinking, so I'm in recovery from alcohol.
Mhm.
And about a year after I stopped drinking, um, the roof fell in on me.
Okay.
I I had my own trauma
Mhm.
from childhood trauma, and I knew of these things, but I didn't attach much meaning to them. So I spent my own time in therapy for about 18 months to 2 years,
Oh.
and had a great therapist. And I came out the other end and I decided, ah, I have learned something here. I'm not going to be a dean anymore. I went back to school and I got another degree, but in counseling this time.
Mm.
So once I had the counseling degree and I set up a private practice, I knew I wanted to work in the area of trauma.
Okay.
Uh, and there was a training program for NLP and hypnosis very close to me in the Washington, D.C. area. So
Mm.
I went to the American Hypnosis Training Academy, and I took about 500 hours of training over several years' time. Um,
Mhm.
became an NLP trainer. I became an Ericksonian hypnotherapy trainer,
Wow.
and I also learned eye movement integration, and that was in 2002.
Yes.
Okay. Now, eye movement integration was right after Francine Shapiro introduced EMDR. That was
Mhm.
1989. There were two leaders in NLP, Steve and Connie Ray Andreas. They wrote several books in NLP. Anybody who studies NLP will see their names and their work. They created eye movement integration after they saw what Francine Shapiro did with EMDR. What many people don't know is that Francine Shapiro was part of the NLP community for several years. She actually worked in the training office of John Grinder,
Mm.
who was one of the founders of NLP, of course. So she knew a lot about NLP. And if you, in the book that I wrote, which we'll get back to,
Multi.
multi-channel eye movement integration is an expansion of eye movement integration that Connie Ray and Steve developed. And when I learned eye movement integration in 2002, I was amazed. I was amazed at the change it could bring about. The only problem was when I started to train other people, they wanted procedures. They wanted to see the theory. They wanted to see how it's supposed to work. So in by 2008, I started developing my own procedures and I added several different components. I use the NLP structure of experience theory as the basis, and submodalities are very important in what I do. So prior to that time, from like 2000 until 2006 or so, I was doing a lot of hypnotherapy and I was doing a lot of NLP work. What I realized is that eye movement integration NLP could expand its reach a great deal. So I pulled in the submodalities and created what we call a bottom-up therapy for trauma. So it's sensory based. You know,
Okay.
most of the most popular trauma therapies are cognitive,
Mhm.
right? So cognitive behavioral therapy, cognitive processing therapy, prolonged exposure, written exposure therapy, and it goes on and on. But with eye movement integration and also with MEMI, multi-channel eye movement integration, we don't focus on the cognitions.
Okay.
We don't have to,
Mhm.
because we pre-test for the sensory information. So I'll ask about the visual that goes along with the memory, but I don't ask what is the visual. I don't even ask people to tell me what happened to them. They
Okay.
don't have to, they don't have to tell their story. I will just say to them, for example, you have a thought about that. What's your thought about that? And they will say something like, oh, I shouldn't have been there. It's my fault, right? So in a cognitive therapy, we'd recognize that as a negative or irrational cognition. And we would, in cognitive therapy, we would want to change that into a more rational characterization of the event, thinking that it will then de-escalate the sensory and the somatic reactions that people have, right? So in MEMI, we ask for the thought, we just write it down. We don't do cognitive restructuring. And I will ask them, okay, there is a visual image of that, right? And one of the techniques that we use for safety is called therapeutic dissociation.
Mhm.
So instead of imagining the image in front of them, I'll use body language, NLP, intonation, and say, you're going to project an image of that all the way over there. You
Mm.
hear my voice? All the way over there. You're not going to be in the image. You're going to be here with me. So using location, right? We also anchor a resource, an NLP anchoring technique. So if somebody tells me that their emotional reaction is terror to that experience that they had, I'll ask them, give me a word that's the opposite of terror. And they
Okay.
might say powerful. Okay. Okay. And then I'll say, okay, I want you to think of a time when you were very powerful, maybe the
Mm.
best time in your life, when you were the most powerful of all. Can you think about that? Yeah, okay, I got one. Then we revivify that positive emotion. Okay, drift back in time. See my gesture. Settle into that experience. And I
Okay.
want you to see everything you saw then, feel everything you felt then. And I want you to notice where in your body that feeling is most prominent.
Fine.
And now I want you to grow that feeling. Move it out to your extremities, from the top of your head down to the tips of your toes. And they do this usually with their eyes closed. And then we anchor it with the word powerful, powerful. Okay. That safety technique is something we use every time we're doing the eye movements. Just before I will begin and ask them to project the image, I will say, and remember, what's that word? That's right. That's right. And you want to see them come alive, with that powerful feeling. So that is, in counseling, we call that reciprocal inhibition. we're posing the negative experience with this uplifting experience, and they compete with each other. And that limits the effect of the trauma experience.
Yeah.
And then we go with the eye movements. And well, there's three factors that we look at most. The visual image, one, and I will ask, is it in color or black and white?
Yeah.
And I write it down. Is it a movie or a still photo?
Hmm.
Is it near or far?
Mhm.
Is it fuzzy or clear?
Uh-huh.
Okay. And we use a scale from 0 to 4 to measure the intensity of that image. So 0 is no intensity at all. 1 is mild, 2 is moderate, 3 is high, and 4 is the highest. So, okay, the person says it's a 3, it's high. Okay, I write that down. And then we ask about the physical reaction. Where do you feel it? Well, it's my chest is tight, or my hands are clammy, right? Or I'm nauseous in my stomach. Okay. Which of those is the strongest physical reaction? My chest being tight. Okay. 0 to 4. How intense is that feeling? It's a 4. Okay. Then we go to the emotion. You said the emotion was terror. And how intense is that emotion for you, 0 to 4? It's 4. Then we finish the pretest. Then we go to the eye movements. And if I'm working on Zoom, like we're on Zoom,
Yes.
I will use a light. Okay. And because you're on Zoom, sometimes we have to coach people about how to move their eyes. Okay. I'm not going to do a real MEMI session with you.
Yes. Got it.
So
Got it.
you don't have to worry about the problem. Okay. But there are 4 sets of eye movements, and they become more and more complicated. The first one is similar to EMDR's bilateral eye movements. Okay. And when we finish 10 to 20 of those, I take a break. We break state, as we say in NLP. And I say, what did you have for breakfast this morning? Oh, blueberries. I love blueberries, right? And that was the break state. And now I say, okay, connect with that image again and tell me if it's the same or different. And the person will say, well, it's different. How is it different? Well, the image is farther away. Oh, surprise, right? Does that make it better or worse? Well, it makes it better. Okay. What score would you give it now? Because it was a 3 before. So we want those scores to be down at around 0 or 1, right? And we test each, the physical, the tightness in the chest, we retest, and the nausea, we retest that as well. And we also use a SUD score.
Mm.
Yeah, a SUD score is subjective units of distress scale, right? And we set it as Steve Andreas did when he created eye movement integration. We set it at 100. Instead of asking someone on a scale from 0 to 10, how distressing is it? We set it at 100 for a reason that I will explain. And then after an eye movement set, we say, okay, the SUD score is for the whole experience, right?
Mhm.
We tested the imagery and the physical reaction and the emotions, but if you add them all up and we started at 100, that's how you usually remembered it. What score would you give it now? So the score will go down to 90 or 80 or 70. When you think about all of the changes in the sensory information and the somatic information, how does that add up on the total scale? Okay. So there are 4 eye movements sets. Compared to EMDR, EMDR might have 18, 20, 25 bilateral eye movements in a single session. And they test for the cognitions. They have a validity of cognition scale. It's 0 to 7. No, 1 to 7. And 7 represents the worst possible. And so if the cognition gets better, then they will ask the person, we want you to get down to a 1, where it's not, the cognition is, positive. So they test and retest the cognitions. We don't at all. Because when the imagery and the sounds and the physical reaction and the emotions come down, the cognitions change on their own. You don't need to change it. In a demonstration video I did, a woman said, in the beginning, I asked her, what's your thought? And she said, it's my fault. And then I didn't ask her again. We finished and we brought the scores down. I said, do you remember what your thought was in the beginning? She said, no. I said, what's your thought now? She said, looking at it, she said, it's just a very unfortunate thing that happened. Yeah. And so that's the way it goes in MEMI. So we're cutting out a whole component of most eye movement therapies, the cognitions, and we're just focusing bottom up on the sensory-based information related to a memory. And these are things that I added over time, like the scale and the questions that you would ask, is it in color, black and white? And for sound, you would ask, is it loud or soft? Is it near or far away? Is it continuous or is it intermittent, right? That's just to get a baseline for their subjective experience of that sensory element. And then, because it's subjective, when it changes, it's much more valid for them because it's their own experience. They're seeing change in front of them. So I started writing in 2008, and by 2021, I had finished the book that I showed you, Multi-Channel Eye Movement Integration. And now we're out there training people. So I'm going to stop there and let you ask any question you might want to.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for unboxing MEMI. And if someone wants to get into the training part, Mike, what are the different ways? Because I have seen that for therapists, there is one set of module and like that. Could you please help us understand which one can pick to get started?
Yes. So the therapy was developed as a clinical model, but one of our trainers who came on board had a lot of experience both with EMDR and with first responders. First responders are not necessarily clinical people or the people who work with them. So we're talking about veterans, military people, EMS, emergency management people, firefighters, policemen, people like that, right? Those individuals, at least in our country, have peer-to-peer support networks.
Okay.
And yeah, so if you work in the Dallas Police Department, they have a program that they support where people who are actually policemen or policewomen, they get training in how to support their cohorts, their colleagues.
Okay.
And their support groups. They're, not facilitated by a mental health person. So Brian in Texas came up with the idea of developing a non-clinical model. So if you are a counselor, psychologist, social worker, marriage and family therapist, or a psychiatrist, those individuals would take the clinical training.
Okay.
And you can take it online. We have a webinar that's about 12 hours, but you take it at your own pace. You go to the website, Multi-Channel Eye Movement Integration And you'll see the training options there. We do live trainings, so we have trainers in South Asia, in Singapore, and UK, near London, and one in New York, who's a clinical psychologist, and one in Texas right now.
Mm-hmm.
So they do live trainings and they do live stream trainings.
Okay.
So if you wanted to take a live stream training from me, I'm going to be offering January 16 and 17 a live stream training on the website for NLP practitioners, for hypnotists, and for coaches.
Hmm.
There is also an NLP program that is a webinar that's on demand.
Okay.
So you take the course, and when you're finished, we require you to have 10 hours of consultations from a trainer. They're usually done in groups, small groups, 6 to 8 maybe. And you meet with the person on Zoom, or if you're local and they are doing it live, we also have live presentations at different places. Then you might meet with them in person. Okay. After the 10 hours, you've completed the second part, and then you're ready for certification. There is a test after the course, the instructional course, and you take that online, no matter where you take the course. If it's a webinar or live stream, doesn't matter. You take the course online, take the test online, and when you pass the test, then you get your certificate for the course, and you move on to consultations.
Yeah.
When you finish the consultations, you get a certificate for the consultations, and then all you have to do is upload your certification in your discipline. So this is important. If you are licensed, you're a counseling psychologist, you would upload that certification that you have, or the document, or your degree, right, that gave you that label. And once we see that, then you pay a small fee and you're certified, and you get a little pin that's an image that you can use in your marketing and in your business cards. And so it's really a 3-step process: the course and the test, the consultations, and then upload your document and pay the fee, and you're certified.
Wonderful, wonderful. And what are the various benefits of this modality that you can break it down from the benefits perspective, Mike?
So I'm going to brag a little bit here because
please.
So I told you that I'm EMDR trained as well.
Yeah.
So MEMI categorically is much faster than EMDR. It's 1 to 2 sessions for a single incident trauma. 1 to 2 sessions. Okay. If you take a cognitive therapy, it's going to be 15 to 18 sessions. If it's EMDR, it's going to be 6 to 12 sessions. Okay. Not only that, the changes take place rapidly with MEMI. So because we only have 4 eye movement sets, I did say they get more complicated as you go through them, but the numbers go down very fast. And a lot of the time, you don't have to do more than 2 or 3 sets.
Okay.
Because the targets for us, there are 4 success criteria. We want your submodality scores to be 1s or 2s. I'm sorry, 0s or 1s. 0s or 1s. We want your set score to be at least 50 or less.
Okay.
Because 50, based on all of our experience, is the place at which a person will say, yes, I think it's going to be manageable now going forward. That's the criterion that we use. And we ask people, do you think if it stays just the way it is now that it's going to be manageable for you? So that's the second one. The third one is, are you satisfied with the results? And I'm sorry, there are four. So the first one is the I score or the intensity score, the SUD score. Is it going to be manageable? And in the future, if you're confronted with this again, it will be okay.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So those are the criteria. And I think that, from all my experience, that MEMI is head and shoulders better than the other eye movement therapies.
Wonderful. And what is the average duration of this MEMI sessions?
1 hour.
1 hour. Okay.
Yeah. The average
And
is 1 hour. It might, there are times when it might go over.
oh,
But you also have to keep in mind that some people who come to you with severe trauma are very dysregulated. And so sometimes you have to just take a session before you do MEMI to help them learn self-regulation through self-regulation. So, I will model for them how to breathe. I use gestures, let's just figure out how to do that. Deep breath in. That's right. Exhale through your nose. Deep breath in. Exhale through your nose. Good. And if they can't do that, we might do a sensory grounding technique. The way that we do that is I'll pick up something off my desk and I'll say, okay, and I've done this a lot. When somebody dissociates, for example, and you can't do work when they're dissociated, you get their attention, you say, look at me, because making eye contact with someone automatically interrupts a dissociation. Doesn't work all the time, but most of the time. And so I'll hand them, if I'm in person, I'll hand them something like this. And I'll say, what color is it? What shape is it? Oh, is it long or short? What do you like most about it? So we're requiring them to use their sensory process to answer those questions. And then I'll give them something else. What does this feel like?
okay.
What shape is this? What color is it? Okay. And I can do this on Zoom, right?
Yes,
Or
yes.
if it's on Zoom, I'll say, tell me some of the colors in the room where you are. So that allows me to look around and say, well, there's black, there's gold, there's white, and there's some brown. And that's, again, requiring sensory responses that will bring someone back from a dissociation so that you can then go back to the eye movements and the protocol.
My next question is, irrespective of which eye movement modality, it could be EMDR, it could be MEMI, or it could be brain spotting, it could be anything. What is the logic behind the eye movements therapy?
I'm glad you asked that because we have some hard science now that informs us about that. So my argument is that it doesn't matter which of the eye movement techniques you're using, they all will work to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
Don't all work at the same efficiency though.
Okay, okay.
Because of the way they're done.
Hmm.
So with EMDR, we're only accessing bilateral eye movements. And if you remember the eye movement model in NLP, right?
Yes.
On the horizon, out to either side, is auditory processing. Most of the time, out to your left is past auditory. Out to your right is future auditory or constructed auditory, something I've never heard before. Like I might ask somebody, if I'm testing their eye movements, say, I want you to imagine Donald Trump singing the Star Spangled Banner. And so if their eyes go out to the right, like mine just did, because they have to construct it, then I know that their eye movements are normally organized. A la NLP, or according to NLP, when we take the eye movements in an atypical direction, in other words, I'll ask you to think about the visual image of that, but I'm going to move your eyes down here to the corner and up here on your right side because your visual past is over here, right? And that is a pattern interruption. And when a pattern interruption occurs, it allows the brain to reorganize the content, right? That was 1978 NLP discovery or theory. In 2018, we have two studies where they worked with mice first and then with college students. But they had the mice, their heads were stabilized on a platform, so they could only move their eyes, they couldn't move their head. And they installed a fear memory in them with shocks. So in this environment, the mice were, twitching with shocks, right? And then what they did is they used fMRI technology and looked at the blood flow in the brain, and they saw that there were 87 brain regions that they looked at.
Wow.
All 87 of them had increased blood flow, okay? Which is what you would expect. There's some, a shock to the system, everything goes up. But then after the shocks, they had bars move across the screen in front of the mice like this. And what do you think that does?
Eye movement.
Yes, their eye movements follow the bars to the right, they're gone, and they appear over here, so their eyes go back to the left. So effectively, mice are doing bilateral eye movements. Then they did fMRI again, and they saw that 83 of the regions went up with the eye movements. 4 of the regions went down. Where? In the basolateral amygdala. So when the amygdala is reacting to a threat, it's vibrating, right? And it's sending out electrical charges to the networks in the brain to, come alert here. We've got to defend the territory here. So that was the first indication that eye movements themselves, when you install a fear memory, eye movements without any talk have the ability to quiet the amygdala. And they did a very similar study with college students. They installed a fear memory with a shock, and their heads were stabilized. And they did, instead of bars moving, they used a laser dot, but the laser dot just went back and forth like this. So their eyes were going back and forth like this, watching the laser dot after they had the fear memory installed, and their amygdalas went down as well. With the mice, and this is really important, I think, after they finished all of the fMRI tests, because fMRIs measure blood flow, right? Not electrical signals. But it's all long been theorized that blood flow equates or accompanies electrical signals. So what they mice is they inserted an electrode into the basolateral amygdala, one, and they inserted another one in the primary visual cortex, okay? And then they ran the test again. They got the same results. With the visual cortex, the electrical signal went up, right? The intensity went up. But in the basolateral amygdala, the electrical charge went down. So, it's not just theory anymore. We have some hard science that tells us that this doesn't. To get back to your question, which one is, more efficient or whatever? All of them will work to a certain extent, but I think where brain spotting, EMDR, and IEMT out of UK. IEMT is actually a redone version of eye movement integration. But Andrew Austin, when he developed it, focused on emotional imprinting. So it's all about emotions, right? EMDR, it's all about cognitions. And with brain spotting, you're looking for that spot where there's a tick, something happens, right? And the theory there is that there's a neurological mishap that is located, that is triggered by that part of the visual field. I have a hard time with that because there's no science to back that up. He hypothesized that, and it's still just a hypothesis. David Grant. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mike. So this gave a complete overview what is the logic behind the eye movement therapies, and then what is MEMI, and what is the certification process going forward, and what inspired you. And friends, I'll be making available all the official website, the Amazon link for the Mike's books and all that. So thank you once again, Mike, and it was wonderful talking to you.
Same to you. And maybe we will see you in January to take the live stream course.
Sure, Mike. Thank you. Thank you.
My pleasure. You have a good one.
Thank you.